At 2:17 p.m., Mrs. Olivia Bennett received a call informing her that there had been an accident. Your daughter Hannah is in critical condition, and your spouse Michael didn't make it. My world fell apart in a matter of seconds. I sobbed uncontrollably when I contacted my parents, telling them that Michael was dead and Hannah might not live. They replied, Can this wait till 30 days after they learn about the settlement money? Connor's birthday is today." I showed them what true loss looks like, and all of a sudden they had time and wanted half. Where are you viewing from? Please leave a comment below and click subscribe to follow my grief and betrayal journey. And ultimately recovering before everything was altered by that terrible Tuesday day, Michael and we met when we were juniors at Northwestern University, where I was studying, and I had created what I believed to be the ideal life. This tall, beaming architecture student asked if he might share my table with me when I was staying up late in the library studying finance. Michael Bennett's chuckle made everyone around him smile, and his brown eyes were the sweetest I've ever seen. After college, I worked as a financial analyst at a company, and he studied civil engineering, reputable Chicago corporation, and 3 years later, on a lovely October day, we were married. Ceremony where we exchanged vows while golden leaves swirled around us. A year later, we moved into our first house, a lovely colonial with 3 bedrooms and a backyard that was ideal for the family. Wanted to create, but after years of reproductive treatments, life had different ideas. After 3 miscarriages and innumerable tears, we were on the verge of giving up when our miracle occurred. After a challenging pregnancy, Hannah Elizabeth Bennett, weighing 6 lb/2 arrived. Hannah became our world as soon as we brought her home, with her father's brown eyes and my obstinate chin. In the living room, Michael would spend hours creating intricate blanket forts with structural supports that he maintained were essential for maintaining the integrity of the fort, and the 3 of us enjoyed pancakes every Sunday morning. Contests, where participants create ever more ludicrous forms and vote for the most creative creation. Although Michael's attempt at the Sears Tower merited honorable mention, Hannah's unicorn-shaped stack often prevailed. I valued our nightly ritual the most for ambition, if not execution. We would meet at the kitchen table for homework, art projects, or board games after supper. When Hannah was just 6 years old, Michael taught her how to play chess, and we were both amazed. She learned her strategic thinking from you, Liv, by defeating him in a legal manner by the age of 8. Even though we both understood her competitive nature was my main objective, he would reply with pride. My relationship with my parents remained complex during these joyful years. Barbara and Richard Ward had always made it clear that they preferred my younger brother Connor after I received honors from Northwestern. When I got a big promotion 3 years later, they went, but departed early to help Connor move into his sophomore dorm. Connor needed a transport to a basketball game, so they had to cancel our celebration supper a while back. Michael would grip my hand beneath the table at family get-togethers when my mother was there, and I tried not to let it hurt. Stopped me mid-story to inquire about Connor's most recent girlfriend, or my father looked at his watch as I described my Michael, would mumble, nodding towards Hannah, who was typically creeping close by. "We're your real family?" I thought. He began the accident morning just like each other Tuesday that Michael made. Hannah was thrilled about her swimming competition that afternoon, which she called Mom Watch, while I packed her lunch. "Want me to perform the backstroke flip turn like Coach Janet instructed us?" she remarked, gesturing with her arms. I said, "I wish I could be there, sweetie, but I have that quarterly review meeting at the breakfast table." "Dad will record it for me, right?" she questions as she zips her lunch inside her dolphin-shaped lunch bag. Michael verified kissing the top of my head as he went by, so I'm arranging my camera angles and considering a wide image for the race, then cut to the winning party. Hannah grinned and rolled her eyes, but she said, "Dad, what if I lose? Then I'll—" He winked, making us both chuckle, and will inform Mom that you were defrauded by biased judgment. Our final typical moments, our final breakfast together, and the last time I heard I kissed them both, when I heard Michael giggle or watched Hannah roll her eyes on the final typical morning before everything fell apart. Michael would drop Hannah off at school at 7:45 a.m. before going to his. I went to the workplace after picking her up early from the construction site for the swim meet. The meeting was proceeding smoothly, and I was already thinking about the presentation I would be giving at 2 p.m. I was outlining our fourth. My phone vibrated during quarter projections, but I ignored it, and it vibrated once more. And once more, I apologized to the room as it buzzed for the fourth time in 5 minutes. I excused myself and checked the screen for calls from a number I didn't recognize. When I went outside, it rang one again. Is Olivia Bennett's voice serious? There has been an accident. This is Officer Martinez from the Chicago Police Department. The world tipped when your husband and daughter were involved, so I grasped the wall to stay upright, even if I was unaware of it at the time. The next words would split my life into before and after. You must come to Northwestern Memorial. Your husband's car was hit by another car right away. I regret to inform you, driver, that Michael Bennett was declared deceased at the spot where your daughter Hannah was found. Serious condition, and I don't recall losing my phone or my co-worker Rachel discovering me unconscious although Mom later claimed to have run red lights to get me to the hospital. I don't recall her driving me there in the corridor. Quicker. The next distinct memory I have is of myself standing in the emergency room. The accident report depicted my husband yelling his name as though sound alone might bring him back from wherever he had gone. A clinical image of a red pickup truck at 1:42 p.m. on the worst day of my life ran a red light at the junction of Madison and 46, driven by Thomas Wells. Later, Holstead's blood alcohol content was found to be 0.21, which is almost 3 times the legal limit. At about 48, a truck struck Michael's silver Honda Civic's driver's side, causing his death. Hannah was immediately strapped into her booster seat following severe head trauma. Due to shattered ribs, the passenger side sustained a severe traumatic brain damage. Officer Martinez informed me of the facts: a punctured lung and a shattered femur. In a quiet room my only thought at the emergency room was that Michael had been escorting Hannah to her swim meet, but I was unable to process them. She had never had the opportunity to demonstrate her new flip turn because she was so thrilled about it. Dr. Lawrence, a gentle neurosurgeon with gray temples, described Hannah's intracranial pressure-induced coma while utilizing terms that appeared to be from a foreign language, cerebral edema and cranial monitoring. I nodded as if I understood. But I realized that my 9-year-old daughter might not wake up, so I inquired when I could see my husband. After Lawrence concluded his explanation of Hannah's procedure, a social worker named Patricia directed me to another floor. She attempted to get me ready by sharing details about Michael's trauma and wouldn't look like himself. And nothing could have prepared me for my lively, humorous spouse to become still under severe. His face was fairly calm under the fluorescent lights, yet something wasn't quite right. I touched his chilly palm, devoid of the liveliness that had turned him into Michael. At that point, I broke down and collapsed across his chest, pleading with him to wake up, to stay with us and return to assist me, as I am unable to accomplish this on my own. I'm not sure how long I lingered there, but Patricia eventually led me back to the surgery waiting room where Hannah was still. I had to call my folks, so I sat by myself in surgery staring at my phone. Barbara answered on the 4th ring, letting them know they had to come. Olivia, we're in the middle of Connor's birthday meal, and I could hear holiday noises in the background. I can hardly talk through my emotions since Michael died in an accident and Hannah was in. There was a pause, and her voice sounded awful. Surgery, I need you. Dipped somewhat, but remained composed. All of Connor's buddies are at Rosetta's, and we've rented the entire backroom wait until this evening when Connor is ready to open his presents. I was shocked to learn that my spouse had passed away. Mom, I recognize that my granddaughter might not make it through the night, but it would be impolite of us to just walk out at this time. I'll give you a call tonight to see how everyone is doing. After the phone ended, I sat paralyzed in a new type of misery. My parents decided to choose Connors above me, so they weren't joining the tsunami of pain. My friend Megan arrived an hour early for my birthday celebration, which was the worst moment of my life. Later, after seeing my frantic text, she spent the night with me as Hannah, had one surgery then another, and she brought me coffee that I was unable to consume. Sandwiches I was unable to consume, so she called Michael's parents in Florida, who promptly made travel arrangements in spite of their health problems and elderly age. She called my boss and described the she set up for bereavement leave, and she fulfilled all of my parents' obligations. I spent the first 72 hours alternating between feelings of anxiety and grief, between sitting next to Hannah's bed in the pediatric intensive care unit, her little frame linked to more devices than I could keep track of, and his parents showed there to help with the burial preparations for Michael. Despite being shocked and grieving, I managed to find the strength to support myself. When everything calmed down, Dr. Lawrence clarified that the parents had called once, making evasive sounds about coming. Hannah's condition was stable but critical. In order to aid her brain, they put her in a medically induced coma. He said gently, "The next few days are crucial, and that we should just wait." I slept in a chair next to Hannah's bed, waking up at the sound of the monitor. So I waited. Every time the devices that are keeping her alive beep or change rhythm, nurses called Sophia and Daniel became my lifelines, guiding me through every step of the process. Medication, every tiny indication of concern or hope. On the fourth day, of a man in a suit, who identified himself as Jeffrey Williams, showed up to Hannah's door. An accident and wrongful death lawyer like your buddy Megan phoned me and gave me the following explanation. Your husband was struck by a driver who was extremely drunk and had a history of DUIs. I don't want to deal with the possibility of a large civil settlement in addition to the probable criminal accusations. Overwhelm you at this time, but you need act swiftly to take necessary legal actions to safeguard you and your daughter's interests. I signed documents that I hardly ever read, and Jeffrey assured me that he would take care of everything to keep me updated, but not graciously remarked, "Let me worry about the burdened focus on your daughter." Legal aspects. Later that night, I got a call from Thomas, an insurance agent, who explained that the insurance provider for the intoxicated motorist was already talking about potential settlement terms past me without any purpose. And I realized that no amount of money could make Michael return or ensure Hannah would awaken. As when I realized I had to arrange Michael's funeral by myself, Hannah's first week in the hospital continued into the next day. His parents had temporarily moved back to Florida in order to set up longer-term care for Michael's father, who had my parents sent flowers, but clarified that I couldn't stay with my neighbors indefinitely due to advanced Parkinson's disease. That Connor needed assistance getting ready for his job interview because the betrayal went deeper with each day's planning. A certain form of agony is created by your husband's burial while your child is fighting for her life. I decided on a casket, while my laptop resting on my knees as I sit next to Hannah's hospital bed. The only sound in the room was the beep of her heart monitor. So I chose flowers while half of her morning neurological evaluation was spent hearing Dr. Lawrence describe her intracranial pressure improved, and at 3 a.m, I wrote Michael's obituary, tears obscuring the screen as I attempted to summarize my 40 years of active life in 3 paragraphs. The day before the funeral, my parents finally called, and we sincerely apologize for missing your calls, Olivia. My mother remarked, "No real." Connor's birthday celebration was a little late, and she apologized in her tone. After that, he had a significant interview with the architecture business where your father has been mentoring him for the past week. I remained silent. She went on hurriedly, but the stillness stretched awkwardly over the queue. Should nothing come up, I should be able to attend the burial tomorrow. Is it again? I said bluntly. St. Matthew's Church, which is a little convenient, dear Connor, has a potentially lengthy lunch meeting. I had planned it for the morning, but the ridiculousness of the question rendered me incoherent, as though I had chosen the time. We did our best to make it convenient rather than the sole available time at the church where we were married. My father's voice interrupted. But we may have to depart early because Connor has another dedication every evening, Connor. And even now on the morning of the burial, I left Hannah's side for the first time in 10 days, and the nurses assured Megan that they would call right away if anything changed. Significant in a pragmatic sense when he gave me a statistic that almost made me cry. The phone, it was more than I had anticipated, sufficient to pay for Hannah's future care requirements and medical bills. I felt a weight lift for the first time since the accident, and everything will be all right. Hannah would receive the care she needed financially, and I wouldn't have to decide between physical therapy sessions, and Hannah squeezed my palm 3 times in a pattern when I was paying the mortgage that night. She gave me 3 squeezes, saying, "I love you," even though we hadn't established what she was attempting to say when I asked. Muttered, realizing at once that 3 squeezes indicate 1 love. Yes. I put her tiny palm against my moist cheek and said, "Squeeze." I also adore you. That night, I called my parents to tell them that Hannah was more important than anything in the world. The positive updates on Hannah's development and addressed the settlement in passing. The morning after I informed my parents' lawyer about the arrangement, their response would completely alter the course of events. Jeffrey showed up at the hospital with meticulous documentation and a composed demeanor. We sat in the family consultation room as Daniel, the insurance company, conducted Hannah's morning physical therapy session. "An official offer has been made by the corporation," Jeffrey stated as he passed a document across the table. "It's significant, as anticipated considering the fact that Mr. Wells had several prior DUI convictions, were much higher than the allowed amount, and ran a red light in the middle of the day, and I looked at his unquestionable responsibility. The amount on page 7 is sufficient to guarantee Hannah would get all of the therapies and treatments she needs. Possibility to fully recuperate. We need to discuss how to structure this," Jeffrey added. "Suggest creating a medical trust to cover Hannah's continuing care. This will safeguard the money and guarantee that they're accessible during and after her recuperation process." For the following hour, according to Jeffrey's options for handling the compensation, a sizable amount would be put in a structured agreement that will provide Hannah with ongoing care payments for the rest of her life. An additional amount would be made available right away for ongoing medical costs, required house improvements, and Hannah may require specialized equipment for her recovery. But what about taxes? Inquired about my experience as a financial analyst emerging from the haze of sadness and fatigue. Payouts for tangible. Jeffrey clarified that injuries are often tax-exempt, but we'll work with a specialist accountant to guarantee that everything is set up correctly. As Jeffrey described the financial information, I thought of Michael, who had always taken care of our long-term financial. I joked that since I was in charge of our daily finances, it was only fair. He would reply, "I'll chart the course. You keep us afloat." At this point, I was navigating by myself. Spend some time going over everything Jeffrey stated as our guide to decisions that will impact Hannah's entire future. The meeting is over, but don't delay too long because the sooner we agree and arrange the settlement, the sooner those money will be available. Become available for Hannah's treatment, I looked into pediatric rehabilitation centers that afternoon. Figuring out the lifetime care expenses and discussing Hannah's long-term prognosis with Dr. Lawrence were startling, but they would be covered by the settlement, and Hannah would have what she required. That assurance felt like the first stable ground I'd been on since the accident was when my parents' number appeared on my phone that night. "Olivia," my mother started without saying anything. And my father and I have been talking about your predicament. We've decided it's time. We visited appropriately. But how about tomorrow afternoon? Their unexpected attention surprised me after 7 weeks of visiting. Precisely once remaining for less than 30 minutes and providing no substantial assistance, I said cautiously, Hannah's been showing real improvement, adding that she's using hand squeezes to communicate. The doctors are hopeful since the eyes are focusing better. That's fantastic, sweetie. And has the settlement issue you brought up advanced? Her tone changed just enough to raise a red flag in my eye, said hazily. Mind it's being handled. And the lawyer is figuring out the information about your father's extensive knowledge of financial affairs. She pressed him to be pleased to review the case and provide some advice. These circumstances can be complicated. I almost chuckled at someone with no experience. I was a financial analyst with an MBA. My father taught history in high school, and he frequently made bad investing decisions. I value the offer, but I asked if you would be coming around lunchtime because I have professional advisors. I should get Hannah ready for tomorrow because she gets nervous around people she hasn't seen in a long time, and the subtle criticism wasn't lost on my mother, who answered stiffly, We'll be there at 1 while, before hanging up the phone. The following morning, I gently informed Hannah of her grandparents' upcoming visit, saying, They haven't been able to come much because I carefully considered what I said, saying, They've been busy. Hannah deserved to know that her grandparents loved her no matter what. After acknowledging my conflicted sentiments for them, Hannah clasped my hand. Realized, and even at 9, she wasn't thrilled about it, so she squeezed twice. Years old, despite having a catastrophic brain injury, Hannah was able to see through my parents showed up at exactly 1/2 with a lot of colorful balloons and a cuddly bear from the hospital gift store. My mother appeared to be visiting a business associate, since she donned a sophisticated pantsuit and heavily applied cosmetics. My father followed her with a folder after her injured grandchild. That made me suspicious right away, Hannah. Look at how much better you're doing. I noticed Hannah's heart rate, and my mother said, You'll be up and about back to normal soon. Dr. Lawrence had cautioned against implying that Hannah would recover quickly or completely. Thus, there was a little uptick on the monitor. Making impressive strides but still having to endure months or years of therapy, Hannah is steadily improving, as I gently corrected, and we're enjoying every little triumph, aren't we, Hannah? Yes, my mother did put the bear on Hannah's bedside, after she squeezed my hand. Tableland turned right to me, Olivia, saying, We need to talk about some crucial. Hannah's speech therapist responded, Maybe we could go outside? Anything you need to say can be said here. Promotes casual conversation around her, even if she is unable to completely engage. However, your father and I have been conversing, and my mother's smile tightened rather nicely. Regarding the settlement situation, we are aware that it is rather large and intended to pay for Hannah's medical requirements. Naturally, my father's care may last for decades, I stated bluntly, interrupted opening his folder, but these circumstances call for cautious handling. Family support networks, and as they talked, I observed that they maintained. I excused myself, looking towards the door and obviously wanting a private talk. I went to the loo for a short while, and when I came back, I heard them whispering, My mother was saying in the corridor, We should be entitled to some consideration. We're family. With the right funding, Connor's company idea may truly take off, and the settlement is intended to be shared. A chilly comprehension swept over me as my father concurred that family helps family. Wasn't about helping Hannah or myself. Rather, it was about obtaining the settlement funds. So I returned to the room, keeping my face neutral. Hannah is growing weary, so I said maybe we should carry on this discussion at a later time. My parents looked at each other, and we'll visit your home next. This week, my mother made a firm decision. When Hannah goes to bed, we can have a true family conversation. Hannah gave me 2 handshakes when they departed, saying, No, she hadn't. Liked their eye caressing her hair and whispered, I know, baby. That night I called Megan and told her about the scenario. Her indignation echoed my own, but I was unable to articulate it. "That money is for Hannah's care," she screamed. "I think they're very serious," I said, observing Hannah sleep. "And I believe they will exert a lot of pressure." "What will you do?" I thought about that while observing my daughter's chest. Rise and fall, I eventually responded to anything I had to say. My parents showed up at my front door exactly at 7 p.m. the week after their hospital stay. Stood a little behind them, appearing uneasy yet resolute. Hannah was. A night nurse was sleeping upstairs with her as I handled what I anticipated would be a difficult talk. My mother gave me air kisses that didn't touch my cheeks as she greeted me, Olivia. "The place appears as nice as it could be considering the situation I was in." Seeing how my father's gaze moved across the living room, perhaps figuring up assets and property values. "Can I offer anyone tea?" asked Connor, who was fidgeting with his phone while sitting on the edge of the sofa. I cautiously asked my voice. Mom said, "That would be lovely," and I went to the kitchen to take notes. "Then we can get down to business." I took a little longer than expected to prepare the tea tray, and my hands trembled a little while I placed biscuits that nobody would eat. I could hear them talking quietly through the doorway, using words like reasonable percentage and family. Duty, my parents arranged themselves on the couch like a united front Connor had when I brought the tea back. Transferred to an armchair, still appearing uneasy but accepting his part in whatever they had planned, Olivia. After I finished pouring the tea, Father started talking. "We've thought a lot about the family's circumstances with this settlement. Provides a substantial possibility for Hannah's medical care through the settlement. I bluntly stated that her recovery might take years, and the money would be put in a..." My mother dismissed, Ively waved her palm, saying, "Yes, of course, Hannah's medical trust. Needs must be met, but the compensation undoubtedly goes above and beyond what these awards normally cover. Significant restitution for the loss of companionship and emotional pain." So, according to what your mother is saying, my father went on to explain that there need to be enough space to sustain the whole family. All impacted by this catastrophe, I sipped my tea as I waited for them to arrive at what we think my mother said, leaning forward that Hannah's care would get 50% of the settlement in an equitable allocation, with the remaining 50% given to the family to assist us all in moving ahead. The audacity was... Amazingly, I carefully put down my cup to conceal my trembling palms. "And in what way might the family part help?" I inquired in a remarkably steady voice, and my mother gave me a big smile. Considering my inquiry to be one of curiosity rather than incredulity, Connor has created a fascinating business plan. For a tech startup with amazing potential, he could truly succeed if given the right funds. Connor shifted uneasily, but nodded. "It's a dog-walking coordination app. It as Uber, but for pets. And naturally," my dad added, "your mother and I'm getting older. We should consider retirement. Maybe a vacation home where the family might assemble. A healing space." "I see," I muttered. "And what about Michael's? Does this family distribution include parents?" My mother's expression darkened as she said, "Well, they're not direct blood." "Are they still relatives?" Excuse me, but I stood up suddenly when Michael left. I went upstairs quietly for a little while to see how Hannah and the night were doing. "Nurse," I took a picture album out of my closet before going into my bedroom. I had been putting things together for Hannah so that when she recovered completely, her memories of her father would be maintained. Chose 2 pictures and went back downstairs where Connor and my parents were engrossed in a conversation that ended when I walked into the room, I saw the resolute look on my mother's face. From early youth, the one that came before using whatever means necessary to acquire what she wanted. Olivia started speaking in a manipulative tone that I was all too familiar with. "I know this is tough, but we do this because family supports. Family. You have every advantage now. Because your father and I reared you and encouraged your studies. Connor's business plan is quite promising, so it's time for some reciprocity, my father continued. With the correct investment, it may eventually benefit all of us. This is what Michael would have desired, bolstering the whole family. Something stiffened inside me at the sound of Michael's name. How dare they call upon him to serve? Their avarice? Softly, I answered, "You're right. Family should support family." "I knew you'd see reason, dear, before we discuss," my mother said with a smile on her face. As I went on, "I wanted to show you something." I gave them the first I had taken it for a picture of Michael in his coffin, his face serene, but clearly dead. Hannah, so that one day she would have documentation of bidding her father farewell, a farewell she had been too hurt to. My father's face was devoid of color, and he turned his head away as my mother gasped. "Is how half of my loss appears." I spoke steadily through the tears. "This occurred as you were celebrating Connor's birthday, and they threatened to collapse before they could. In response, I gave them the second picture, which had Hannah in the. Her head was partially shaved for the surgery, and her little body was hooked up to ventilators and monitors. Her face was severely bruised and swollen after saving her life, and this is, I went on to say, that your granddaughter is struggling for her life in the remaining 50%. The color had entirely disappeared from my mother's face when you were assisting Connor with his job interview preparation." As he clutched the picture, my father's hands shook, and it appeared as though he may be ill. I said, "Each for Hannah's care, word exact and cutting, will be fully placed in a trust. Every cent will go towards paying for her therapy, equipment, and medical bills. My 9-year-old daughter, who lost her, will benefit from her education in the future. Has everything she needs to heal after losing her father and almost dying herself." "Thrive," I stood, signaling that our talk was coming to an end. At 2 Wow, a real family arrives, sits in hospital waiting rooms, and delivers coffee. Me, as my father concurred, that family helps family. Wasn't about helping Hannah or myself. Rather, it was about obtaining the settlement funds. So I returned to the room, keeping my face neutral. Hannah is growing weary, so I said maybe we should carry on this discussion at a later time. My parents looked at each other, and "We'll visit your home next." This week my mother made a firm decision. When Hannah goes to bed, we can have a true family conversation. Hannah gave me 2 handshakes when they departed, saying, "No, she hadn't," liked their eye, caressing her hair, and whispered, "I know, baby. That night I called Megan and told her about the scenario." Her indignation echoed my own, but I was unable to articulate it. "That money is for Hannah's care," she screamed. "I think they're very serious," I said, observing Hannah sleep. "And I believe they will exert a lot of pressure. What will you do?" I thought about that while observing my daughter's chest. Rise and fall, I eventually responded to anything I had to say. My parents showed up at my front door exactly at 7 p.m. the week after their hospital stay. Stood a little behind them, appearing uneasy yet resolute. Hannah a night nurse was sleeping upstairs with her as I handled what I anticipated would be a difficult talk. My mother gave me air kisses that didn't touch my cheeks as she greeted me, Olivia. The place appears as nice as it could be considering the situation I was in. Seeing how my father's gaze moved across the living room, perhaps figuring up assets and property values. "Can I offer anyone tea?" asked Connor, who was fidgeting with his phone while sitting on the edge of the sofa. I cautiously asked my voice. Mom said, "That would be lovely," and I went to the kitchen to take notes. "Then we can get down to business." I took a little longer than expected to prepare the tea tray, and my hands trembled a little while I placed biscuits that nobody would eat. I could hear them talking quietly through the doorway, using words like reasonable percentage and family. Duty, my parents arranged themselves on the couch like a United Front Connor had when I brought the tea back. Transferred to an armchair, still appearing uneasy, but accepting his part in whatever they had planned. Olivia. After I finished pouring the tea, Father started talking. We've thought a lot about the family's circumstances with this settlement. Provides a substantial possibility for Hannah's medical care through the settlement. I bluntly stated that her recovery might take years, and the money would be put in a— My mother dismissed, Ively waved her palm, saying, "Yes, of course Hannah's medical trust. Needs must be met, but the compensation undoubtedly goes above and beyond what these awards normally cover. Significant restitution for the loss of companionship and emotional pain. So, according to what your mother is saying, my father went on to explain that there need to be enough space to sustain the whole family. All impacted by this catastrophe, I sipped my tea as I waited for them to arrive at what we think my mother said, leaning forward that Hannah's care would get 50% of the settlement in an equitable allocation, with the remaining 50% given to the family to assist us all in moving ahead. The audacity was amazingly. I carefully put down my cup to conceal my trembling palms. And in what way might the family part help? I inquired in a remarkably steady voice, and my mother gave me a big smile. Considering my inquiry to be one of curiosity rather than incredulity, Connor has created a fascinating business plan. For a tech startup with amazing potential, he could truly succeed if given the right funds. Connor shifted uneasily but nodded. It's a dog-walking coordination app. It as Uber, but for pets. And naturally, my dad added, "Your mother and I'm getting older. We should consider retirement. Maybe a vacation home where the family might assemble. A healing space." "I see," I muttered. "And what about Michael's? Does this family distribution include parents?" My mother's expression darkened as she said, "Well, they're not direct blood." "Are they still relatives?" "Excuse me, but I stood up suddenly when Michael left. I went upstairs quietly for a little while to see how Hannah and the night were doing. Nurse, I took a picture album out of my closet before going into my bedroom. I had been putting things together for Hannah so that when she recovered completely, her memories of her father would be maintained. Chose 2 pictures and went back downstairs, where Connor and my parents were engrossed in a conversation that ended when I walked into the room, I saw the resolute look on my mother's face. From early youth, the one that came before using whatever means necessary to acquire what she wanted, Olivia started speaking in a manipulative tone that I was all too familiar with. I know this is tough, but we do this because family supports family. You have every advantage now because your father and I reared you and encouraged your studies. Connor's business plan is quite promising, so it's time for some reciprocity," my father continued. "With the correct investment, it may eventually benefit all of us. This is what Michael would have desired, bolstering the whole family." Something stiffened inside me at the sound of Michael's name. How dare they call upon him to serve? Their avarice? Softly I answered, "You're right. Family should support family." "I knew you'd see reason, dear, before we discuss," my mother said with a smile on her face. As I went on, I wanted to show you something. I gave them the first I had taken it for a picture of Michael in his coffin, his face serene but clearly dead. Hannah so that one day she would have documentation of bidding her father farewell, a farewell she had been too hurt to. My father's face was devoid of color, and he turned his head away as my mother gasped. Is how half of my loss appears. I spoke steadily through the tears. This occurred as you were celebrating Connor's birthday, and they threatened to collapse before they could. In response, I gave them the second picture, which had Hannah in her head was partially shaved for the surgery, and her little body was hooked up to ventilators and monitors. Her face was severely bruised and swollen after saving her life, and I went on to say that your granddaughter is struggling for her life in the remaining 50%. The color had entirely disappeared from my mother's face when you were assisting Connor with his job interview preparation. As he clutched the picture, my father's hands shook, and it appeared as though he may be ill. I said each for Hannah's. Care, word exact, and cutting will be fully placed in a trust. Every cent will go towards paying for her therapy, equipment, and medical bills. My 9-year-old daughter, who lost her, will benefit from her education in the future. Has everything she needs to heal after losing her father and almost dying herself. Thrive, I stood, signaling that our talk was coming to an end. At 2 wow, a real family arrives, sits in hospital waiting rooms and delivers coffee. Takes your hand when you recognize your husband's body in the morning. My mother's disbelief was turning into fury since family doesn't wait for financial gain to show concern. Listen up, Olivia. As your parents, we should be respected, I said, quietly. Consideration and respect are earned and you haven't earned. When you're prepared to become grandparents, I'd prefer you to depart right away. Hannah, you can call us until then if you want to help us without any strings attached. I apologize, but we don't require the type of family you're providing, he murmured. Liv, and I was taken aback to see sincere remorse in his eyes. Didn't intend for things to turn out this way. My mother clutched her pocketbook like a shield while my parents stood rigidly. You'll regret. When Hannah needs us and you're feeling overburdened trying to handle things alone, you'll wish you had made this choice, she stated icily. Perhaps I wouldn't have been so obstinate, I admitted, but I'd rather fight by myself than see you treat my daughter's catastrophe akin to winning the jackpot. Goodbye, Mom, Dad, Connor. I kept the door open. I experienced a strange mix of relief and regret as I saw them quietly make their way to their car and drive away. Wash over me. I had lost my husband and coming close to losing my daughter. My parents as well, but I had a sneaking suspicion that they had never truly belonged to me. That night, I slept in the monitors next to Hannah's bed were constantly beeping, reminding me that my family was still here. Despite the fact that I'm still struggling 6 months after my meeting with my parents, Hannah laughed while sitting in her wheelchair on our back porch, bread to the birds congregating in our garden, but her development had been impressive. Not without difficulties. She said the wheelchair was probably just there temporarily. With more effort from physical therapists, she would most likely be able to walk again. Perhaps she always spoke with a small limp, and occasionally she would halt. Cognitive tests revealed that even though she was exhausted, she was getting stronger every week. Residual consequences of her brain injury, specifically in short-term memory and maths, but her personality, Mom, she called pointing, but her humor and basic Hannah-ness stayed the same. Look at that red one, Dad would say to a cardinal that had arrived on our fence. Have enjoyed seeing it. We had included Michael's images into our everyday conversations. We told Dad stories over supper, sometimes laughing all over the house. Even though he would occasionally cry, he would always keep his memory alive and be present. Consented to sit with her on the porch. Do you recall how he used to give the birds absurd names? Have given that one Hannah considerable consideration as a cardinal. Most likely, Sir Red Hood the Magnificent concluded that our new routines had made us both giggle. Hannah attended treatment sessions 3 times a week at a gradually established. I had returned to a rehabilitation facility that specialized in pediatric brain injuries, to have flexible hours and work part-time so that I could be at home when Hannah needed me when Michael's parents came to visit. Each month, they stayed in our guest room, bringing warmth and memories of Michael's early years into the house. The settlement was completed and set up precisely as Jeffrey had suggested, with a trust established for Hannah's continuing medical requirements, together with extra money saved for her schooling and future financial security. Even if everything was safe, I would have given anything to have Michael return and Hannah not hurt. Mom, Hannah said. As we observed the birds, her voice assumed the hesitancy that emerged when she brought up challenging subjects, such as, why Grandma and Grandpa Ward never come to visit, do they? Are they upset with us? My heart was broken by the question. In spite of Hannah missed her grandparents in every way, and I had taken care to avoid making fun of them in front of her because I thought, "They're not furious at us, baby," I answered cautiously, acknowledging that she had the freedom to make her own ideas. Sometimes Grandma and Grandpa Ward have been concentrating on Uncle because adults make decisions about where to concentrate their time and energy. Connor recently. Hannah thought about this, but they are aware that I was harmed, right? Dad passed away, and they are aware that I chose my next words carefully, I believe. People may avoid difficult situations because they don't know how to deal with them, or Hannah said, with the simple insight of youngsters, "I don't know what to say. That's silly. When you're feeling down, I completely agree with you, that I need people more, not less." I squeezed her. 3 weeks later, that's a pretty wise way to look at it. Shouldered gently. An envelope containing my parents' return address, a card, and the card was for Hannah and included a 4-page handwritten note, a gift certificate to her favorite bookshop, and a straightforward message to Grandma and Grandpa Ward, "Thinking of you, nothing fancy." But it was the first letter they had sent acknowledging Hannah since the altercation, and I sat at the Hannah read my mother's unexpectedly open comments to Olivia at the kitchen table after she had gone to bed. "I doubt you'll read this, and if you don't, I wouldn't hold it against you because what your father and I did was unacceptable. I feel obligated to try, even though there are no suitable words to convey our regret. The pictures you showed us have been with me every day ever since, not because they were startling, but because when you were going through unspeakable suffering, they made us face the reality we had been avoiding. We failed you as parents and Hannah as well since we were preoccupied with unimportant things and Connor's constant needs. Your father and I have spent a lot of time together, grandparents, and we have failed as human beings. We had restless nights talking about how we got to the point where we would prefer a birthday celebration over a daughter's tragedy. There is no justification for someone to attempt to make money out of a child's suffering, only regret and shame. We don't deserve or demand forgiveness, but we want you to know that your words that evening transformed us, and we're working to develop into better individuals deserving of re-entering your and Hannah's lives in the future, if you ever have. Connor has also been thinking a lot about why he stopped communicating with us. A few weeks following that evening, he called us repulsive for our actions. Yes, he has since been working as a volunteer at a rehabilitation facility like Hannah's in an effort to comprehend what you and she's going through. So if you're open, we'd like to come see Hannah on her next birthday. There are no expectations. Wants only to be present in order to start the protracted process of regaining a position in. If this is unwanted in your lives, we fully and profoundly understand. I folded the letter, not sure how to feel, but a part of me wanted to express my regret and love for Mom, rip it up to shield Hannah and myself from more letdowns. But another in my mother's comments, I somewhat acknowledged sincere regret. People could change, couldn't they? I wasn't that. Teaching Hannah about her own healing process, showing her that improvement was always possible and that setbacks weren't permanent after multiple. After giving it some thought, I contacted my mother and explained, Hannah's birthday celebration will be small. She skipped any greeting, just a couple of therapy pals, Megan's parents, and Michael's family, 3 to 5 on the month's last Saturday. If you'd like to attend, you're welcome. But the focus should be on Hannah rather than mending our friendship. I assumed the phone had ended because there was such a long pause on the other end. "Thank you, Olivia," my mother finally spoke. "We'll be there on Hannah's terms and on your terms," dripping with what sounded like tears. When Hannah turned 10, the weather was ideal for early October, so we organized a tiny backyard celebration with decor that highlight her newest passion, marine biology. Michael's parents assisted with blowing up balloons and hanging streamers. When my parents arrived, their calm presence served as a reminder that family might be a source of strength rather than suffering. The awkwardness was evident at precisely 3 o'clock, and they were carrying a big gift, wrapped in paper featuring seahorses and dolphins that were obviously selected with Hannah's interests in mind. A half-hour later, they separately arrived with a tiny gift bag, and as they got closer to where she was sitting in her wheelchair, I exclaimed, "Look who's here, Hannah." Uncomfortable smile, Hannah. As if she were trying harder, she watched, her grandparents with the intense, direct stare that had grown since her accident. "Hi," she said, only "Hello, Hannah," in order to comprehend the world around her. Mother responded with her typical assurance, "Happy birthday. I really missed you." Hannah thought about this and remarked, "My dad died, therefore I needed you the most." Her ruthless simplicity struck my parents in the eyes of my father. "You're right," he replied, kneeling to her eye level despite the fact that it was tearful and something I had seen maybe twice in my life. "We should have been there because of his arthritic knees, but we made a horrible error. I'm sorry, Hannah." She looked at him for a while before nodding once. I would want some cake that my mother baked with blue frosting inside that resembles the ocean." That Hannah provided a way forward, not precisely forgiveness, but a chance. To start over, the celebration went surprisingly smoothly, and my parents made sincere attempts to interact with Hannah by inquiring about her therapy and paying close attention to her occasionally halting explanations. Connor apologized for his role in a private conversation with me. "I've been thinking a lot about this settlement demand," he said, watching Hannah displaying to my father her assortment of seashells that represent the type of person I aspire to be. "The kind brother," I answered. "I'm not accepting or rejecting his apology. It's a process." 2 weeks later, my parents requested if they might go to one of Hannah's therapy sessions as we're all working things out day by day, sessions to have a better understanding of her recuperation process, and the following month they recommended family counseling with a therapist who focuses on family alienation and healing, gradually and carefully. Instead of attempting to repair what had never really been fixed, they started reconstructing what had been damaged and created something new. Existed. Hannah and I went to the place 1 year after Michael's passing. She insisted on driving herself from the automobile to the grave as they strolled through the cemetery together. Hannah touched the etched letters of her father's name, as we laid flowers on the gravestone. "We got hurt, but we kept going," she stated simply, adding that she thought her father would be proud of us. Blinking back tears, I agreed that Dad would be really proud of you. "You are the bravest person I know, and you too, Mom." She demanded that you look after me, go to work, and stop crying till I thought I was asleep. But my observant daughter noticed me smiling through my tears. Hannah remarked, "Are we going to be okay?" As we slowly made our way back to the car. We look out for one another, don't we? Just the two of us. I gave the question careful thought and gave her the truth. Her response was well-deserved, and although we will change from our previous state, there will always be a Michael-shaped hole in our lives. But yes, we will be all right because we have each other and loving individuals. We were sitting on the porch swing that night, creating a new kind of family. Hannah was leaning over my shoulder while we watched the sunset paint, which Michael had put the summer before the accident, the sky in vivid pinks and oranges. "Family isn't only your biological family," whispered, remembering Megan, who had arrived when my parents wouldn't have. Despite their health concerns, the elderly parents traveled to help us of the therapists. And nurses who had become a member of our extended family is someone who shows up, stays, and loves without, like us, Hannah whispered, nodding drowsily against my shoulder. "Exactly like us," I said. As the sun sank below the horizon, I reflected on the trip we had taken the previous year, unbearable loss, the treachery, the challenging recuperation process, but also the finding strength I didn't know I had, strengthening genuine friendships, and reestablishing family connections built on more sincere principles. We had weathered the worst that life had to offer, and Hannah was ready for whatever came next. And I, our small but powerful family of two, would confront it together. What would you do if your family abandoned you in your... Have you ever had to rebuild your life after a disaster during your darkest hour? Please share your opinions in the comments section below. If Hannah's bravery motivated you to subscribe and see more inspirational tales of resiliency, don't forget to like this video. Tell someone who might need a reminder that even in our most broken moments, we can discover strength. We appreciate your participation in our community, which allows us to share these challenging experiences together.